My friends, in this world we live in, there are few things more crippling than the weight of self-doubt. It is a shadow that lurks behind every ambitious step, a silent whisper that questions your worth at every turn. It is the enemy that creeps in unnoticed, often louder than the world around you, telling you that you are not enough. But today, let us speak of an enemy that is more easily vanquished than most believe. To conquer self-doubt, the first step is to acknowledge it, not with the intention of eradicating it immediately, but simply to recognize that it exists. Too often, we try to deny our doubts, to shove them into the corners of our minds where they cannot be seen. But in doing so, we give them power. They grow in the shadows, more insidious and menacing than they would be if we simply took a moment to face them. Acknowledging self-doubt is not a weakness, it is the beginning of true strength. Only when we admit that doubt is present, we can confront it and use it as a tool for growth rather than allowing it to become a barrier. Self-doubt, in its nature, is often seen as a negative force, a destructive whisper that says we are not enough. But in truth, doubt is not inherently evil. It is the reaction to doubt, how we allow it to shape our actions and beliefs, that determines its effect on our lives. We live in a world that constantly tells us to be certain, to appear confident, to show no signs of vulnerability. In this world, doubt becomes something we fear, a blemish on the facade of competence and success. Yet, doubt is an essential part of being human. It is born from the very process of thinking critically, of questioning what we know, and sometimes what we believe to be true about ourselves. To acknowledge that you doubt is not to accept defeat, it is, in fact, the first step toward overcoming the limitations that doubt places upon you. When doubt emerges, it often carries with it a heavy emotional weight. It can make us feel small, insignificant, or ill-prepared. But instead of fighting these emotions, instead of pretending they do not exist, it is important to sit with them for a moment, embrace them, and ask yourself why they have arrived. What is the root cause of this doubt? Is it the fear of failure? Is it a lack of experience? Is it the voices of others, perhaps those who have told you that you cannot succeed? These questions are essential. Understanding the source of your doubt takes away its ability to control you. When you name the thing that is holding you back, you take away its mystery, its power. Consider the moments in your life when doubt has felt overwhelming. In these moments, it might have seemed as though it was the loudest voice in the room, drowning out every other thought. But it is worth remembering that this voice is often not the voice of truth. It is the voice of fear, the voice of uncertainty, the voice of your own inner critic who would have you believe that you are not enough. When we acknowledge doubt, we give ourselves the space to examine whether this voice is speaking truthfully or if it is simply projecting our insecurities. Not all doubts are based on fact. Some are born out of past experiences or fears of things that have not yet happened. Acknowledging doubt also means recognizing its presence without allowing it to dictate our actions. It is easy to become paralyzed by the thought of not being good enough. This paralysis often leads us to a place of inaction, where we stand still, waiting for the right moment or for the doubt to somehow disappear. But in doing so, we miss the very opportunity to move forward. Doubt may linger, but movement is the antidote. When we acknowledge doubt, we do not give it power to stop us. We give ourselves the chance to take the next step anyway, even with the uncertainty. The act of moving forward despite the doubt is an act of courage. This is not to say that we should ignore or suppress the feelings of doubt. Suppressing doubt leads to inner conflict and dissonance. The energy we expend trying to avoid our doubts can ultimately drain us, leaving us with less emotional and mental strength to deal with the challenges that lie ahead. Instead, by acknowledging self-doubt, we create space for it to exist, but not to dominate. Doubt does not need to be vanquished, nor does it need to be eliminated. It simply needs to be acknowledged, so that it no longer has the power to rule over us. There is also power in the simple act of sharing your doubt with others. So often we keep our doubts to ourselves, afraid that if others knew how unsure we were, they would lose respect for us. Yet it is in sharing our vulnerability that we often find connection and strength. You are not alone in feeling uncertain. Everyone at some point faces the storm of self-doubt. It is part of the human experience. When we acknowledge our doubt to others, we open up a space for shared wisdom and understanding. It allows others to offer their perspective, to help us see that the doubts we carry may not be as insurmountable as they seem. Acknowledging doubt is also a practice in humility. It is a recognition that we do not have all the answers and that there is room for growth. Humility is not a weakness, but a strength, because it allows us to be open to learning. When we admit that we doubt, we are admitting that there is something we have yet to understand. And in that admission, we give ourselves the opportunity to seek the knowledge that will help us grow. Doubt, when acknowledged with humility, becomes a springboard for learning rather than an anchor that holds us back. A key part of this process is recognizing that doubt is not a sign of inadequacy. On the contrary, it is often a sign of growth. The more we push ourselves beyond our comfort zones, the more likely we are to encounter doubt. When we embark on new endeavors, when we take risks, when we strive for something greater than we have known, doubt appears as a natural consequence. It is the body's way of telling us that we are venturing into the unknown. And that is precisely where growth happens. To doubt is to be human. It is to be in the process of becoming, to be on the path to something better. By acknowledging self-doubt, we are giving ourselves permission to be human. We are not required to be flawless, nor are we meant to be without fear. But what we are meant to do is to continue moving forward despite those doubts, to take the next step, and then the next until we have reached a place where we can look back and see how far we have come. It is in this recognition that we find our true strength, not in the absence of doubt, but in our ability to acknowledge it and still choose to move forward. The power of acknowledging doubt is not found in overcoming it instantly, but in accepting it as part of our journey and using it to propel us toward the future we are meant to create. We are often quick to judge ourselves based on past failures, allowing them to shape our perception of our abilities and limit our potential. The weight of these failures can make us question whether we are capable of achieving anything worthwhile. Yet it is crucial to understand that failure is not the final word. It is not an accurate measure of your worth or potential. Rather, it is a temporary setback, a momentary detour on the road to success. If we let our past failures define us, we are denying ourselves the chance to grow, learn, and ultimately succeed. Every person who has ever achieved anything of significance has experienced failure at some point. It is a part of the process, not a contradiction to success. When we fail, we are simply encountering a roadblock, an obstacle that we must learn to navigate. Failure is not the end of the story, it is just a chapter. But how we react to failure, how we see it, makes all the difference. If we view failure as a reflection of our inadequacy, then we stop trying. We allow it to define us, and in doing so, we remain stuck in a cycle of self-doubt. But if we view failure as a lesson, as an opportunity to learn, then it becomes something we can use to propel ourselves forward. Take a moment to think of any great inventor, writer, or leader. Behind their success lies a history of setbacks, rejections, and failures. Thomas Edison, for example, failed thousands of times before he successfully invented the light bulb. J.K. Rowling's Harry Potter manuscript was rejected by multiple publishers before it became one of the best-selling books of all time. These individuals did not allow their failures to define them. They learned from them and persevered. They understood that failure is an inevitable part of the journey to success. Their persistence in the face of failure is what ultimately allowed them to reach their goals. One of the most dangerous things we can do is tie our self-worth to a single failure or a series of them. It is tempting to believe that failing means we are not good enough, that we are not capable of achieving our dreams. But this is simply not true. The truth is, failure does not mean you are less than anyone else. It means you are trying, and in that trying, you are moving closer to success. Failure is not a permanent state. It is a momentary experience that teaches us something valuable, something that we would not have learned without it. It is also important to remember that failure does not come with a specific timeline. Just because something didn't work out today doesn't mean it will never work out. Success often takes time, persistence, and multiple attempts. We must not judge ourselves too harshly based on a single moment of failure. Instead, we must be willing to adjust our course, to try again, and to give ourselves the grace to keep going. Success is often the result of many failures, each one contributing to the knowledge and resilience needed to finally succeed. When we let go of the notion that failure defines us, we free ourselves from the chains of self-doubt. We become more willing to take risks, to step outside our comfort zones, and to try again after a setback. It is through this process that we begin to build the habits and mindset that lead to lasting success. Failure, in the end, is not something to fear, but something to embrace as a necessary part of the journey toward achieving our greatest potential. Perfection is often held up as the ideal to strive for, the standard by which all achievements should be measured. From an early age, we are taught to aim for perfection, to do things right to meet expectations without flaw. We internalize this idea so deeply that we begin to believe that anything less than perfect is unacceptable. But perfection is an illusion, a mirage that, when pursued relentlessly, only leads to frustration, self-criticism, and missed opportunities. The pursuit of perfection often becomes a barrier to true progress, holding us back from taking risks, trying new things, or even finishing what we start. It traps us in a cycle of endless improvement, where nothing is ever good enough, and no accomplishment ever feels complete. The truth is that perfection, as we understand it, is unattainable. There will always be room for improvement, always a possibility to do things better. But this should not discourage us, it should liberate us. Because if we are waiting for the perfect moment, the perfect result, or the perfect outcome before we take action, we are never going to start. There is a danger in waiting for perfection to arrive, because it never will. The more we focus on achieving an idealized version of perfection, the more we delay the actual work that needs to be done. We waste time trying to make things flawless when we could have been making progress, however imperfect it might be. In fact, it is through imperfection that we learn, grow, and move closer to our goals. And consider the process of learning. Whether it is mastering a new skill, studying a subject, or developing a personal project, the path to success is rarely smooth. It is full of mistakes, setbacks, and stumbles. But it is these imperfections that are vital for growth. The mistakes we make are the lessons we need. Each time we fail, we gain knowledge that brings us closer to success. The key is not to shy away from failure, but to embrace it as an inevitable and necessary part of the process. By doing so, we free ourselves from the tyranny of perfection and allow ourselves the space to explore, experiment, and ultimately create. Perfection, when it is the only thing we focus on, leads to stagnation. It creates fear of failure, which stops us from taking the necessary steps forward. But when we embrace imperfection, we open ourselves up to possibility. The drive for perfection often stems from a deep-seated fear of judgment, fear of not being good enough, fear of not meeting expectations. These fears make perfection seem like a shield, a way to protect ourselves from criticism and failure. But in truth, the pursuit of perfection does not protect us, it isolates us. It prevents us from showing up as our authentic selves, because we are always hiding behind an ideal that can never be reached. The desire to appear perfect can be paralyzing, as it forces us to constantly second-guess our actions and decisions, to worry about every detail, and to fear that others will see our flaws. In doing so, we create a version of ourselves that is inauthentic, a version that is dictated by the expectation of perfection, rather than the reality of who we are and what we are capable of. The truth is, perfection is not what makes us valuable or worthy. It is not our flawless execution or our immaculate appearance that defines our success or our worth. It is our willingness to try, to fail, to learn, and to persist despite the imperfections. We do not need to be perfect to make an impact. We do not need to be flawless to achieve great things. In fact, some of the most significant breakthroughs in history have come from moments of imperfection, moments of trial, error, and revision. It is through this messy process that true innovation emerges. Take, for example, the development of the airplane. The Wright brothers did not succeed on their first attempt. They did not create the perfect flying machine from the start. Their journey was filled with failures, crashes, and setbacks. But each failure taught them something valuable. They learned from their mistakes and used that knowledge to adjust their designs and improve their machines. It was not perfection that led to their success, but persistence in the face of imperfection. Had they waited for the perfect design, they would never have taken the first step. Their willingness to move forward, even when things were not perfect, allowed them to eventually achieve what no one else had before creating the first successful airplane. Perfectionism can also prevent us from completing projects or taking risks. When we demand perfection from ourselves, we set an unrealistic standard that is almost impossible to meet. As a result, we might find ourselves stuck in a cycle of revision, unable to move forward, because we believe the work is never good enough. This can apply to any endeavor, whether it's writing a book, starting a business, or learning a new skill. The constant editing and refining of our work in an attempt to make it perfect can drain our energy and creativity. We might even abandon the project entirely because it never reaches the level of perfection we envision in our minds. But if we focus on progress instead of perfection, we can break free from this cycle. We can allow ourselves to complete the work, knowing that it is a step in the right direction, even if it is not flawless. There is also a cultural aspect to the pursuit of perfection. In a world that often celebrates idealized images of success, beauty, and achievement, it is easy to fall into the trap of believing that perfection is the ultimate goal. Social media, for example, often showcases only the polished, curated versions of people's lives. Creating a distorted sense of what is normal or acceptable, this can lead to comparison, self-criticism, and the constant striving for perfection. But when we recognize that the images we see are carefully constructed and do not reflect the full picture of anyone's life, we can release the pressure to live up to them. Perfection is not the goal, it is the journey, the process, and the willingness to be imperfect, to learn, and to grow that truly matters. In the end, the pursuit of perfection is not only futile, but it is also limiting. It prevents us from fully engaging with life, from taking risks, and from allowing ourselves to grow. The real power lies not in achieving an ideal, but in embracing the imperfections along the way. Perfection, if it ever exists, is a fleeting moment, a snapshot in time. But growth, learning, and progress are continuous. By letting go of the need for perfection, we free ourselves to create, to experiment, and to live more fully. The journey itself, with all its imperfections, is where the true value lies. The voices we listen to shape the lives we lead. And this applies not only to the external voices of others, but also to the internal voices we carry within ourselves. The words we speak to ourselves, the narratives we craft in our minds, have immense power over how we see ourselves and the actions we take. The voices of doubt, fear, and limitation often come from within, echoing in our thoughts, telling us that we are not enough, that we will fail, or that our dreams are beyond reach. But these voices are not the ultimate truth, they are simply reflections of our fears and insecurities. To conquer self-doubt, we must begin by changing the voices we allow to guide us. This starts with the voice within, the voice of self-encouragement. Our internal dialogue is often critical, negative, and unforgiving. We are our harshest critics, quick to point out our flaws, mistakes, and shortcomings. This internal criticism can become so ingrained that we stop noticing it, accepting it as a normal part of our thinking. Yet, this constant stream of negativity can be deeply damaging, preventing us from taking risks, making progress, or even acknowledging our own achievements. When we speak to ourselves with kindness, compassion, and encouragement, we create a foundation for success. Instead of fearing failure, we can approach challenges with a sense of possibility and hope. By shifting the way we speak to ourselves, we can break free from the grip of self-doubt and unlock our potential. Changing the internal dialogue is not an easy task. It requires conscious effort and practice. Just as we would encourage a friend who is struggling, we must learn to offer that same encouragement to ourselves. This means speaking words of support, patience, and belief in our abilities. It means silencing the critical voice that says, "You're not good enough," and replacing it with a voice that says, "You are capable, and you will grow from this." When we change the way we talk to ourselves, we begin to believe in our own potential. We stop seeing ourselves as limited by our past mistakes or current insecurities, and instead see ourselves as capable of overcoming challenges and learning from setbacks. This shift in perspective is not about ignoring reality or pretending that everything is perfect. It is about recognizing our worth and acknowledging that we are more than our failures or imperfections. Encouragement does not mean blind optimism. It means choosing to focus on the strengths we possess and the progress we have made, even if it is small. It means recognizing that every effort, no matter how imperfect, brings us closer to our goals. Encouragement is not a one-time act, but an ongoing practice. Just as negative thoughts can build up over time, positive, encouraging thoughts must also be cultivated regularly. We must make a conscious effort to replace negative self-talk with words of affirmation and support. This can be done through simple practices like speaking kindly to ourselves when we face a challenge or repeating positive affirmations that remind us of our strength and potential. The more we practice encouraging self-talk, the more natural it becomes and the less influence self-doubt will have over our actions. When we begin to speak to ourselves with encouragement, we also start to attract positivity from others. Encouragement is contagious. When we treat ourselves with kindness, we become more open to receiving support from those around us. Our confidence grows, and with it, our ability to face challenges head-on, knowing that we are not alone. We begin to build a positive feedback loop. Encouragement from within leads to greater confidence, which leads to more progress, which leads to further encouragement, and so on. By shifting the voice within us from one of criticism to one of encouragement, we break the cycle of self-doubt and create the space for personal growth and success.